Everyone said flying cars were decades away. China just certified one. Somewhere above a Chinese city right now, a pod is moving through the air with 2 passengers inside and no one at the controls. Not a test, not a simulation. A paying customer sitting in a cabin the size of a small elevator, watching the skyline pass at 90 kilometers an hour while an algorithm handles everything. Takeoff, navigation, descent, landing. The whole thing. And the part that should make every aviation engineer in the world stop and reconsider their timeline? This has already been certified, commercially, by a national aviation authority, for revenue-generating flights, on real routes, in real cities. That happened. It's happening now. For decades, the conversation about autonomous passenger flight followed a predictable arc. A startup would unveil something stunning, a sleek rendering, a prototype that could hover for a few minutes, a TED Talk with a 2035 promise stitched into the final slide. Money would flow in, headlines would run. Then the regulatory process would begin, and the dream would quietly stall somewhere between engineering and approval, sometimes for years, sometimes indefinitely. The gap between "we built it" and "people can ride it" turned out to be the hardest gap in aviation history to close. China closed it. The vehicle at the center of this moment is the EHang EH216-S, a pilotless air taxi, 16 propellers, 8 arms, 2 seats, a navigation screen, a communication button, a small fire extinguisher mounted to one side. That's essentially the entire interior. There's no yoke, no throttle, no instrument cluster demanding a pilot's attention. The passenger boards, the route is already loaded, and the aircraft does the rest, autonomously managing lift, direction, altitude, and touchdown without a single human input from the cabin. The only real decision a passenger makes is whether to look down at the city below or straight ahead at the horizon. And if something goes wrong, you press a button to speak to ground control. That's it. What makes this machine genuinely different from the wave of eVTOL concepts that never left the hangar isn't the engineering, though the engineering is impressive. It's the paper trail. In October 2023, China's Civil Aviation Administration issued the EH216-S, something called a type certificate, the formal declaration from a national authority that an aircraft meets the safety standards required to carry human beings. No country had ever issued one for a fully autonomous passenger aircraft before. Not the FAA, not the EASA. No one. Then, in early 2025, EHang received air operator certificates, the legal clearance to run actual commercial operations, ticketed passengers, scheduled flights, revenue. Before any of that paperwork was signed, the aircraft had completed more than 40,000 test flights. 40,000. The kind of number that doesn't belong to a concept. It belongs to something that has been studied, broken, fixed, studied again, and eventually trusted. Here's a detail the specs sheets don't emphasize enough. EHang's core argument for removing the pilot isn't just about reducing operating costs, though it does that too. It's a safety argument. Human error remains one of the leading causes of aviation incidents globally. Fatigue, distraction, misjudgment under pressure. The 1,000 small failures that come from asking a biological system to perform at machine-level consistency for hours at a stretch. An autonomous aircraft doesn't get tired at the end of a long shift. It doesn't get distracted. It doesn't freeze. The EH216-S has a top speed of 90 kilometers per hour and a single charge range of 130 kilometers, enough to connect districts within a major metro area, enough for a scenic coastal route, enough for a medical evacuation from a mountainous region that would otherwise require a road journey of several hours. Right now, the primary customers are tourism operators and government agencies. aerial sightseeing, fire surveillance, law enforcement monitoring. These aren't marginal use cases kept alive by novelty. They are paying operations, generating data, stress testing the system, and building the operational record that will eventually support something far more ambitious. The scale of what China is actually building becomes clear only when you stop looking at the aircraft and start looking at the policy architecture surrounding it. In 2024, the Chinese government included the low-altitude economy in its National Work Report, the annual document that functions as the country's official economic directive. When a sector appears in that document, it doesn't mean the government is interested. It means the government is committed. Funding follows, local administrations are aligned to it, regulatory bodies are instructed to support it, and performance targets get attached to it. The low-altitude economy, as defined in Chinese policy, encompasses all commercial and civilian activity below 1,000 meters, drone logistics, medical helicopter networks, autonomous passenger aircraft. The entire vertical dimension of urban movement, treated as an infrastructure layer, as serious as roads or railways. By 2025, approximately 57,000 companies were operating within this sector inside China. Vertiports, the landing infrastructure that autonomous air vehicles need, are being built into city planning frameworks. Airspace management systems are being developed to handle the coordination demands of dense urban flight corridors. The national economic target for this sector in 2025 alone is 1.5 trillion yuan, scaling to 3.5 trillion by 2035. This is not a government hedging its bets on an emerging technology. This is a government that has decided the technology has arrived and is now building the world around it. At the same moment, EHang is operating certified passenger flights. A second company is approaching the same problem from an almost opposite direction. EHang, affiliated with Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer XPeng, has built something it calls the land aircraft carrier. The name is deliberately theatrical, and the vehicle earns it. From the outside, it looks like a large six-wheeled electric van, the kind of vehicle you could take on any road, park in any lot, drive through any city. But the rear section conceals a compact flying module. When the conditions are right, the back of the van opens, the module deploys, and the vehicle transitions from road transport to aircraft. The controls for both functions are integrated into a single driving interface. According to the company, transitioning to flight operation requires less than 5 minutes of orientation, not a pilot's license, not a lengthy training course. The ground vehicle carries enough power to recharge the flying module for up to 6 complete flights. The van itself has a range exceeding 1,000 kilometers. What EHang has essentially solved, or at least offered a credible answer to, is the infrastructure dependency that has quietly defeated most other flying vehicle concepts. Every autonomous air taxi design that requires a dedicated landing pad assumes that landing pads will exist where you need them. EHang's vehicle doesn't make that assumption. The vehicle carries its own infrastructure with it. The price range currently sits between $30,000 and $400,000, depending on configuration. Around 7,000 pre-orders were placed before the first units came off the production line in late 2025. Regulatory certification is ongoing, with deliveries targeting late 2026. Pull back from the individual vehicles for a moment. Urban planners have understood for decades that ground-level congestion cannot be solved by adding more ground-level capacity. Every new road or lane generates demand that fills it. The geometry of surface transport has a ceiling, and most major cities are already pressing against it. The geometry of low-altitude airspace does not have that problem. The sky above cities, specifically the band between roughly 100 and 1,000 meters, is, for now, almost entirely unused by civilian traffic. There are no bottlenecks, no signals, no surface friction of any kind. A route that costs a commuter 45 minutes on the ground could could take under 10 minutes at altitude. For dense urban centers, that's a reshaping of what proximity means. For rural and mountainous regions, of which China has vast stretches, the implications run deeper. Communities that are functionally hours away from hospitals, markets, or essential services by road could be minutes away by air. The distance between infrastructure and isolation has always tracked closely with economic inequality. Autonomous low-altitude vehicles don't just add a transport option, they alter that relationship. There's a moment from a journalist's account of riding the EH216-S that is worth sitting with. Seated in the cabin, no pilot visible, the aircraft lifting without drama, the journalist said something to the effect of, "I told myself I wouldn't look down. Then I immediately wondered whether I should." That small internal negotiation between the instinct for caution and the pull of genuine wonder captures something the statistics and the policy documents don't. For most of human history, flight required a class of specialists. It required aircraft designed for pilots, trained people in seats, the entire structure of aviation built around the assumption that a human being must be in command of the machine. What is happening in Chinese cities right now is the beginning of something different, not the end of piloted aviation, but the emergence of flight as a service that doesn't require one. Flight that can be summoned, boarded, and completed without specialist knowledge, without a runway, without a fuel stop. The journalist landed, stepped out, and apparently grinned. That reaction, part relief, part disbelief, part quiet exhilaration, might be the most honest document of where this technology actually stands. Not in the certification paperwork, not in the market projections. In the face of someone who just flew somewhere without a pilot and found, to their own surprise, that it worked exactly as described. The aircraft is certified, the routes are operating, the passengers are boarding. The question worth sitting with isn't whether this becomes normal. Things like this have a way of becoming normal faster than anyone expects once the first proof exists. The question is, what changes? In cities, in economies, in the daily texture of how people move, when the sky stops being the domain of specialists and starts being something you simply use.